On a deserted road under the scorching sun, a billionaire stood frozen beside his luxury Tesla, completely dead. No phone signal, no GPS, no one around. Panic and despair set in when he remembered the $100 million deal waiting to be signed in just a few hours. Just as all hope seemed lost, a poor woman driving an old pickup truck appeared in the distance and fixed his car in only a few minutes. When the billionaire offered her $500 in thanks, she flatly refused, and the reason she gave left him completely speechless. Before we dive into this story, let us know where you are watching from. Drop it in the comments. The man stood in front of the chain-link fence, hands in the pockets of his wool coat, simple, gray, expensive in a way that didn't announce itself. Behind the fence, a public school building sagged under its own weight, cracked windows, rust bleeding down the gutters, a basketball hoop with no net. The parking lot was a patchwork of asphalt and weeds, and somewhere a door banged in the wind over and over like it had been doing that for years and no one had bothered to fix it. His lawyer stood 3 feet behind him, holding a leather folder. She hadn't said anything in 2 minutes. That was unusual. She was paid to talk, paid very well, but now she just stood there, the folder pressed against her chest like a shield, watching him the way you'd watch someone standing too close to the edge of a cliff. "Mr. Pearson," she said finally. Her voice was careful. "We can still make the call." He didn't turn around. His eyes stayed on the school, on the kids coming out the side door, backpacks slung over one shoulder, laughing about something, shoving each other the way kids do. They didn't look at him. Why would they? "The board's waiting," she said. "They'll wait another hour if they have to. But after that, I know. Do you?" Now he turned, looked at her. She was younger than him by maybe 10 years, sharp in the way corporate lawyers are sharp, all edges and efficiency. She'd worked for him for 6 years. She'd seen him close deals that would have broken other men, seen him walk into rooms full of wolves and walk out owning the room, but she'd never seen him like this. Standing in front of a broke-down school in a neighborhood most people with money pretended didn't exist, staring at a building like it held the answer to a question he hadn't figured out how to ask yet. "I know what I'm doing," he said. "I don't think you do." She said it quietly, but it landed hard. "You're about to turn down the largest acquisition offer in the company's history. You're about to walk away from $270 million, and you're doing it here." She gestured at the school, at the cracked sidewalk, at the row of houses across the street with peeling paint and sagging porches. "Why here?" He didn't answer. He looked back at the fence, at the school, at the kids. One of them was wearing a jacket 2 sizes too big. Hand-me-down, probably. The sleeves hung past his hands. He was laughing anyway. The lawyer waited. When he didn't say anything, she opened the folder, pulled out a single sheet of paper, held it out to him. "Just sign it," she said. "We can leave. Go back to the office. Make the announcement. You'll be on every business channel by tonight. This is what you've worked for." He took the paper, looked at it. The signature line was blank, waiting. All he had to do was write his name. That's all it ever took. A name, a signature, and everything changed. But his hand didn't move, because 6 days ago, something else had changed. Something he still couldn't explain to anyone who hadn't been there. Something that didn't fit into quarterly reports or board meetings or leather folders held like He folded the paper, put it in his pocket. "Tell them no," he said. The lawyer stared at him. "You're serious? Tell them no." She didn't move. For a second she looked like she might say something else, might try one more time to pull him back from whatever edge he was walking toward. But then she just closed the folder, nodded once, turned and walked back to the car. He stayed. The wind picked up. The door kept banging, and somewhere behind him, a rusted hinge screamed. 6 days earlier, the sky had been the color of old bruises. Thomas Pearson sat in the driver's seat of his Tesla, hands gripping the wheel, staring at the dashboard like it might suddenly decide to cooperate. No signal, no GPS, no nothing, just a black screen and the sound of his own breathing too loud in the silence. Outside, the road stretched in both directions, empty, flat, the kind of empty that makes you realize how small you are. He'd taken the back road to avoid traffic, some highway closure he'd seen on the app before he lost service. Big mistake. The road was 2 lanes of cracked asphalt cutting through nowhere, Fields on one side, a line of trees on the other, heat rising off the blacktop in waves, and his car dead. He hit the ignition again. Nothing, not even a click. The battery icon on the dash blinked once, mocking him, then went dark. "Come on," he said. His voice sounded wrong out here, too clean, too city. "Come on." He pulled out his phone. No bars. He held it up, walked a few steps down the road, held it higher. Nothing. The meeting was in 2 hours. 2 hours. It was the meeting. The one he'd spent 8 months setting up. The one that would either make him or break him. And he was stuck on a back road in the middle of nowhere with a dead electric car and no way to call anyone. He looked around. No houses, no gas stations, no nothing. Just heat and empty and the sound of insects screaming in the grass. His shirt was already sticking to his back. He loosened his tie, then took it off. Threw it in the car. It didn't help. For the first time in a long time, Thomas Pearson didn't know what to do. He stood there in his pressed slacks and his custom-fitted shirt, staring at the road like it owed him an explanation. Men like him didn't get stuck. Men like him had assistants and backup plans and people whose job it was to make sure things like this never happened. But out here, none of that mattered. The sun was relentless, not the gentle warmth of a beach vacation or the controlled climate of a boardroom. This was different. This was the kind of heat that reminded you that nature didn't care about your schedule or your importance or your 8-month deal. This was the kind of heat that made your mouth dry and your thoughts slow and your confidence evaporate like water on hot metal. He started walking, south maybe, or north. He wasn't sure, just away from the car, towards something, anything. His dress shoes weren't made for this. The leather was too stiff, the soles too thin. Italian leather, $300, useless. After 10 minutes his feet hurt. After 20 he was sweating through his shirt. The sun pressed down on him like a hand, heavy and mean. His phone was still in his hand. He kept looking at it, kept hoping the bars would appear, kept thinking that maybe if he just walked a little farther, found the right spot, stood at the right angle, the signal would come back and he could call someone and fix this. Because that's what he did. He fixed things. He made calls and things got fixed. But the screen stayed blank. No bars, no GPS, no lifeline back to the world where he was important and people listened when he talked. He thought about the meeting. About the 16 people sitting in a conference room waiting for him. About the contracts on the table. About the 8 months he'd spent building relationships, negotiating terms, positioning pieces on a board that only he could see the whole picture of. About what would happen if he didn't show up, if he just disappeared into this empty landscape and never arrived. They'd wait an hour, maybe 2. Then they'd call. When he didn't answer, they'd assume something had happened. An accident. A family emergency. Something that made sense. They'd reschedule, or they wouldn't. The deal would hold, or it would fall apart. 8 months of work would matter, or it wouldn't. And standing there on that empty road, Thomas realized he didn't know which outcome scared him more. Then he heard it. An engine. Old, rough. The sound of something that had been running for decades and would keep running for decades more because it didn't have a choice. The sound carried across the flat landscape, getting closer, and Thomas felt something in his chest loosen just a little. He turned. A truck was coming up the road, faded blue paint, rust eating the edges. It slowed as it got close, then stopped. The engine idled, loud and uneven, coughing like it had been doing that so long it was just part of how it ran now. The driver leaned out the window, a black woman, maybe 50, maybe older. Work shirt, faded jeans, skin dark from sun, not vacation. The kind of dark that comes from working outside every day for years, from fixing things, building things, doing things with your hands under a sky that doesn't care. She looked at Thomas, looked at the Tesla half a mile back, gleaming and useless in the heat, looked at Thomas again. "Car trouble," she said. Her voice was steady, not friendly, not unfriendly, just a statement of fact. Thomas nodded. He didn't trust his voice yet. His throat was too dry. "Battery, yeah." The woman nodded like she'd heard that before. Like she'd seen this exact scene play out 100 times. City folks and their electric cars and their dead batteries in the middle of nowhere. She cut the engine, got out, walked to the back of the truck and pulled out a toolbox, a length of cable, a portable charger that looked older than Thomas. She didn't ask questions. Didn't ask where Thomas was going, or why he was out here, or what kind of meeting was so important that Thomas looked like he might cry. Just started walking toward the Tesla. Thomas followed. He wanted to say something, wanted to explain, wanted to fill the silence with words that would make him feel less helpless. But the woman was already at the car, popping the hood, connecting cables. Her hands moved with the kind of certainty that comes from fixing things your whole life. No hesitation, no wasted motion, every movement had purpose. Thomas stood there watching, useless. He'd built a company from nothing, employed 300 people, closed deals worth millions, and right now in this moment he was completely and utterly useless. He couldn't fix his own car, couldn't get himself out of this situation, couldn't do anything except stand there and watch a stranger do what needed doing. This should give you enough to get to the next town, the woman said. She was connecting the last cable, checking connections, making sure everything was right. There's a charging station about 40 miles south. You'll make it if you don't run the AC too high. Thomas watched her work. The woman's hands were scarred. Old burns, cuts that had healed rough. The hands of someone who'd spent her life doing real work. Thomas looked at his own hands. Soft, clean. The only calluses were from his golf club. I have a meeting, Thomas said. He didn't know why he said it. The woman didn't care about his meeting. Why would she? You'll make it, it's important. The woman looked up, not unkind, but not impressed either, just looking at Thomas like she was trying to figure out what kind of man he was. They usually are, the woman said finally. Thomas felt something twist in his chest. He pulled out his phone again, more out of habit than hope. Still no signal. The screen was hot from being in the sun. The battery was at 20%, won't get service till you hit the interstate, the woman said. She was connecting the last cable, checking the connections one more time. This area's a dead zone. Tower got struck by lightning 2 years ago. Company never fixed it. Not enough people out here to make it worth their while. Right. They stood there while the charger hummed. A low, steady sound. The kind of sound that said it was working, that it would keep working, that it didn't care about being old or forgotten, or not worth fixing. It just did its job. Thomas didn't know what to do with his hands. He kept shifting his weight, looking around, trying to appear comfortable with a situation he wasn't comfortable with. He'd spent his whole life in rooms where he was the one in control, the one people listened to, the one who made decisions and other people followed them. Out here he was just a guy in a dying suit with a dead car, waiting for a stranger to fix his problem. How long have you been driving this road? Thomas asked. He needed to say something, needed to fill the silence with words that made him feel less small. Long time. You help people a lot. The woman smiled, just a little, not big, not warm, just acknowledging the question. When they need it. Why? The woman looked at him, really looked at him. And for a second Thomas felt like he was being measured, not his suit or his car or his watch, not the things that usually defined him. Something else, because someone helped me once, the woman said, long time ago, when I needed it. The charger beeped, a sharp sound in the quiet. The woman disconnected the cables, coiled them up with practiced efficiency, walked back to her truck. Thomas followed, suddenly aware that he was about to be alone again. That this woman who'd appeared out of nowhere was about to disappear the same way. Thank you, Thomas said. The words felt small, inadequate. The woman nodded, put the charger in the truck bed, closed it with a clang that echoed across the empty landscape. Thomas pulled out his wallet, expensive leather, Italian. Inside were credit cards and cash, and a driver's license and all the things that proved he was someone important, someone who mattered. Let me. He started. No need, I insist. He took out $500 bills, more than enough, more than generous, held them out. The bills fluttered in the hot wind. Please, the woman looked at the money, then at Thomas. Something shifted in her expression. Not anger, not pity, something harder to name. We don't do this for money, she said. Thomas stood there, hand outstretched, bills fluttering in the wind. He felt his face go hot. "I just want to thank you," Thomas said. "You already did. But if you want to thank me," the woman said, "drive safe, make your meeting, do something good with your day." She got in the truck, started the engine. "That's enough." She drove away. Thomas stood on the side of the road, holding $500, watching the truck disappear into the heat shimmer. The bills felt heavy in his hand. Wrong somehow. He walked back to the Tesla. Got in. The interior was like an oven. He started the car, and the AC kicked on, blasting hot air that slowly turned cool. The screen blinked on, showing the route to the interstate. 40 miles. He could make it. He could still make the meeting. But as he drove, his hands tight on the wheel, his shirt soaked with sweat, he couldn't stop thinking about the woman's face. The way she'd looked at the money, not like it was nothing, like it was the wrong question. By the time he hit the interstate, Thomas had full bars again, messages flooding in, emails, calls, texts, the world snapping back into place, his assistant asking where he was, his business partner asking if everything was okay, the people in the conference room asking if he was close. He called his assistant, told her he'd be there in 45 minutes, told her to tell everyone to wait, told her everything was fine. He made the meeting, walked in 20 minutes late, but walked in, apologized, made a joke about electric cars. Everyone laughed. The tension broke. They got down to business. He signed the contracts, shook hands, smiled when he was supposed to smile, said the right things at the right times, closed the deal exactly the way he'd planned 8 months ago. Won. That's what they called it. Winning. But all through it, sitting in that conference room with 16 other people, looking at numbers on a screen and signatures on paper, Thomas kept hearing the woman's voice. "We don't do this for money." That night, Thomas sat by the hotel window. The city lights stretched to the horizon. The meeting had gone well, perfect even. His phone kept lighting up with congratulations. His business partner had sent champagne to his room. Success, that's what everyone called it. The champagne sat unopened on the desk. Thomas looked at it. Dom Perignon. Vintage, expensive, the kind of thing you're supposed to want. He didn't open it. Instead he sat by the window and thought about $500, about the way he'd held it out, about the way a stranger had looked at it, not like it was nothing, like it was wrong. He'd offered something valuable, something most people would have taken without hesitation, and the woman had refused. That was the part Thomas couldn't let go. He'd offered payment, the woman had said no, and now Thomas owed something he couldn't repay, a debt that didn't close with cash, a debt that sat in his chest like a stone. His phone rang, his business partner. Thomas looked at it, let it ring, didn't answer. The phone stopped ringing, started again. His ex-wife this time, probably saw the news, probably wanted to congratulate him. He didn't answer that call either. The city lights blurred. Thomas realized his eyes were wet. When had that happened? He wiped them, looked at his reflection in the window. The man looking back at him seemed like a stranger. His phone buzzed. Text from his business partner. "Dinner at Morton's, 8 p.m. Whole team. Get your ass down here. We're celebrating." Thomas stared at the message, thought about saying no, but what would he say? That he didn't feel like celebrating. That the biggest win of his career felt like nothing. That he couldn't stop thinking about a stranger who'd refused his money. He put on his suit, went downstairs, got in a cab. Morton's was packed. His team had reserved the private room in the back. Expensive steaks, expensive wine, expensive people celebrating expensive success. Thomas walked in and everyone cheered. Someone handed him a drink. Someone else clapped him on the back. "There he is," his business partner shouted. "The man of the hour." More cheers, more drinks. Thomas smiled, raised his glass, played the part he'd played 1,000 times before. They sat down to dinner, 16 people around a long table, talking loud, laughing loud, everything loud. The wine flowed, the steaks came, perfectly cooked, perfectly seasoned, perfect. Thomas cut his steak, put a piece in his mouth. It tasted like nothing. "So Thomas," one of the junior partners said, leaning forward, "what are you going to do with your cut? New house, new car? I heard Jennifer picked up that place in Aspen." "Haven't thought about it," Thomas said. Oh come on, you just made 40 million, you have to have thought about it. Thomas took a sip of wine. Maybe. I know what I'd do, another voice said. Marcus from accounting, not the Naomi from the road, a different person entirely. This one wore Gucci and talked too loud. I'd buy that yacht I've been looking at. 40-footer, beautiful thing, park it in Miami. Yacht. Someone laughed. That's it, I'd buy the whole marina. Everyone laughed. Thomas didn't. What about charity? A woman's voice said. Jennifer, senior VP, she'd been with the company 3 years. I always put 10% toward charity. Good for the taxes, good for the soul. She smiled like she just said something profound. Which charity? Someone asked. Oh, I rotate. This year it's the Children's Hospital. Last year was the opera. You have to diversify your giving, you know. Looks better on the portfolio. Smart, someone said. Plus you get your name on a plaque. I'm on 3 walls now. 3 different buildings. Everyone murmured approval. Someone made a joke about buying their way into heaven. Everyone laughed. Thomas looked around the table, at all these people celebrating, at all this success, at all this money being spent on a single dinner that could have fed a family for months. He thought about Naomi, the real Naomi, the one with scarred hands and a truck that barely ran, the one who'd helped him and refused payment. He wondered what Naomi would think of this room, this table, these people, this world. Thomas, his business partner, was looking at him. You okay? You've been quiet. I'm fine. You sure? Because you look like someone died. Just tired. Tired. You just closed the biggest deal of your life. You should be on top of the world. He raised his glass. To Thomas, who showed everyone how it's done. Everyone raised their glasses, cheered, drank. Thomas raised his glass. The wine was bitter on his tongue. The dinner went on, and on. People got drunker, louder, started telling stories about deals they'd closed, money they'd made, people they'd beaten. Every story was a victory. Every victory was measured in dollars. Thomas sat there and listened and felt like he was watching a play he'd been in for years, a play he suddenly didn't remember the lines to. Best part about money, someone was saying, is it solves everything. Any problem you have, throw enough money at it, it goes away. Amen to that. Someone else said, I had this guy working on my house last month, Jennifer was saying. Total disaster, work was shit, so you know what I did? I fired him, hired someone else, paid double, problem solved. That's the only language some people understand. Marcus from accounting said, money, you can't reason with them, can't negotiate, you just pay them or you don't. Simple. Thomas felt something twist in his chest. He thought about the bills in his hand, about the way the real Naomi had looked at them, about the way she'd said, we don't do this for money, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. You ever notice someone else was saying, how people without money always want to make it about principles, like they're too good to take payment. It's just pride. Stupid pride. It's not even pride, Jennifer said. It's resentment. They resent people like us for having what they don't, so they pretend money doesn't matter. But it does. It always does. Everyone nodded, agreed, drank more wine. Thomas looked at his plate, at the half-eaten steak, at the expensive food going to waste because everyone was too drunk to eat. He thought about kids at that school, about teachers buying supplies with their own money, about people working 2 jobs and still not making enough. Thomas, his business partner again. Seriously, what's wrong with you tonight? Nothing. You've barely said 2 words all night. Just thinking. About what? Thomas looked at him, at this man he'd worked with for 8 years, this man who knew everything about his business and nothing about him, about whether any of this matters. The table went quiet, everyone staring at him. Whether what matters? His business partner asked. This, all of this, the deal, the money, the celebration. His business partner laughed, nervous. Of course it matters. We just closed a $270 million deal. And then what? What do you mean and then what? I mean what happens next. We make more money. We close more deals. We sit in more rooms like this and celebrate more success. And then we die, and none of it meant anything. No one said anything. They all just stared at him like he'd started speaking another language. Jesus, Thomas, Jennifer said finally. Who hurt you? Everyone laughed, relieved, like she'd broken some spell. Seriously though, his business partner said, you need a vacation, you're burned out, take a week, go somewhere, clear your head, come back ready to do it all again. Thomas looked at him. What if I don't want to do it all again? What if I don't want any of this anymore? The table went quiet again, but this time the silence was different, colder. You're drunk, his business partner said. I'm not drunk. Then you're crazy. You don't walk away from this. Not when you're at the top. Maybe the top is the wrong place to be. His business partner stared at him. I think you should go home. Sleep this off. We'll talk tomorrow when you're thinking straight. Thomas stood up, put his napkin on the table. I'm thinking straighter than I have in years. He walked out, left them all sitting there, confused, concerned, already writing him off as having some kind of breakdown, already deciding how they'd manage him, how they'd fix him, how they'd get him back to normal. But Thomas didn't want to be normal anymore. Normal was sitting in that room. Normal was measuring worth in dollars. Normal was thinking money solved everything. Normal was what he'd been for 43 years, and normal had left him empty. He walked back to the hotel, took the stairs instead of the elevator, all 42 floors. By the time he reached his room, his legs burned and his lungs ached and he felt more alive than he'd felt all night. He sat on the bed, pulled out his phone, looked at his contacts, hundreds of names, business contacts, investors, clients, associates, people who'd call him back because of what he could do for them. But not one person he could call just to talk, not one person who knew him, really knew him. He scrolled to his favorites, his business partner, his lawyer, his accountant, his assistant, all professional relationships, all transactional. He thought about Naomi, about how she'd known exactly who she was, about how she'd looked at Thomas and seen through the suit, and the car, and the watch to whatever was underneath, about how she'd helped without expecting anything back. Thomas put the phone down, looked around the hotel room, king bed, luxury linens, marble bathroom, city view, everything first class, everything expensive, everything meaningless. He thought about going back to the dinner, about apologizing, about laughing it off and blaming the stress and the exhaustion and playing along until everyone forgot he'd said anything strange, about going back to normal. But he couldn't. Something had broken. Not just cracked, broken, and he didn't know how to fix it. Didn't know if he wanted to fix it, because maybe it needed to be broken. Maybe he'd been broken all along and just didn't know it until a stranger on a back road showed him what whole looked like. The next 3 days were a blur. More meetings, more contracts, more handshakes and congratulations and people telling him he'd done it. He'd won. Thomas moved through them like he always did, efficient, focused, saying the right things at the right times, but inside something was different, something was wrong, like he was watching himself from outside his body, like the person in the suit making the deals wasn't him anymore, or maybe had never been him. Maybe he'd been playing a character for so long he'd forgotten there was supposed to be someone underneath. On the 3rd day his assistant scheduled a media interview. Business Channel. Big deal. They wanted to do a feature on the acquisition. On Thomas. On how he'd built his success. His assistant was excited. This is great exposure, she said. This is how you become a name. Thomas almost said no, but what reason would he give? So he said yes. And at 2 o'clock he sat in his office with a camera crew setting up lights and a reporter with perfect hair and perfect teeth sitting across from him with a list of questions. Mr. Pearson, she said, smiling that professional smile. Thank you so much for your time. Of course. I want to start with the acquisition. $270 million. How does it feel? It feels good, Thomas said. The words came out automatic, rehearsed. We worked hard for this. The team put in countless hours. We're proud of what we accomplished. I'm sure you are. She glanced at her notes. You started this company 12 years ago with just $50,000. Now you're worth over $100 million, personally. That's the American dream right there. I've been fortunate and talented. You have to be both to succeed at this level. She leaned forward. What's your secret? What advice would you give to young entrepreneurs who want to follow in your footsteps? Thomas looked at her, at the camera, at his assistant standing behind it, watching proudly. at all these people waiting for him to say something inspiring, something quotable, something that would make this a good interview. "Work hard," he said. The words felt hollow. "Stay focused, don't give up." "Great advice," the reporter said. But her eyes said it wasn't enough, wasn't interesting enough. She wanted more. "Can you elaborate? What does work hard mean to you?" Thomas opened his mouth, closed it. What did it mean? He'd worked hard, put in the hours, made the sacrifices, built the company, made the money, won. And now he was sitting here feeling emptier than he'd felt when he started. "It means doing whatever it takes," he said finally. "Prioritizing success, making tough decisions, putting the business first, even before family." "I don't have family." "Before friends." "Yes. Before yourself." Thomas looked at her. "Especially before yourself." She smiled. "Wrote something down. That's powerful. That level of dedication. But it raises a question. What's it all for? You've achieved this incredible success, made this money, built this company. What drives you now? What's next? What's next?" Thomas had heard that question 100 times. Usually he had an answer ready. The next deal, the next acquisition, the next milestone. Growth, always more. But sitting there with the camera rolling and the reporter waiting and his whole life reduced to a soundbite, Thomas realized he didn't have an answer. He didn't know what was next, didn't know what any of it was for. "Mr. Pearson," the reporter was looking at him concerned. "You okay?" "Yeah, sorry." "What was the question? What drives you now? What's your purpose?" "Purpose." The word hung in the air between them. Thomas looked past the camera, out his window, at the city spreading below him, 42 floors up, looking down on everything, looking down on everyone, and suddenly he felt like he was falling. "I don't know," he said. The reporter blinked. "Sorry, I don't know what my purpose is." "Oh," she laughed, uncomfortable. "Well, I mean, obviously it's building your business, creating jobs, contributing to the economy. Is it?" Thomas looked at her. "Is that really what it's about?" "Yes, I think so." "What if it's not?" Thomas felt something breaking open inside him. "What if I've spent 12 years building something that doesn't matter? What if I've sacrificed everything for nothing?" The reporter looked at his assistant. His assistant was making cutting motions with her hand. "Stop. Stop talking." But Thomas couldn't stop. The words were coming out now, all the thoughts he'd been having for 3 days, all the questions he'd been asking himself. "I closed the biggest deal of my life 3 days ago," Thomas said. "Made $40 million. And you know what I felt?" "What?" the reporter asked. She'd stopped taking notes, just watching him. "Nothing. I felt nothing. No joy, no satisfaction, no pride, just empty." He looked at his hands. "I've been chasing this my whole adult life. This idea of success. This idea that if I just made enough money, achieved enough, won enough times, I'd finally feel like I'd made it, like I'd arrived. But I'm here now, at the top, and it feels like standing on top of a mountain made of sand, like it could all fall apart any second, like none of it was real to begin with." "Mr. Pearson," his assistant started, "do you know what it's like to realize you've been wrong?" Thomas continued. "About everything. About what matters, about what's valuable, about what makes a life worth living." He looked at the reporter. 3 days ago, I met someone who showed me that. Someone who had nothing, who lived in a community most people like me pretend doesn't exist. And she had something I don't have, something I've never had. "What's that?" the reporter asked. She was recording now. Not because this was a good interview, because this was a breakdown, and breakdowns made good television. "Dignity," Thomas said. She had dignity, real dignity, not the kind you buy with money or success, the kind that comes from knowing who you are and being okay with that, the kind that comes from helping people without expecting anything back, the kind that comes from living right. The room was silent. No one knew what to say. Thomas looked around at all of them, at the camera crew, at the reporter, at his assistant looking mortified. "I think we're done here," Thomas said. "But we've only been we're done." The reporter nodded slowly, started packing up her things. The camera crew broke down their equipment. His assistant wouldn't look at him. They all filed out, quiet, uncomfortable, leaving Thomas alone in his office with the city spreading below him and the realization that he'd just ended his career on television. His assistant came back in after everyone left. She stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "What the hell was that?" she said. "The truth." "That wasn't the truth. That was professional suicide." "Maybe it's both." She stared at him. "They're going to air that. You know that, right? They're going to air you having a breakdown on national television." "I know. And you don't care." Thomas thought about it. Really thought about it. About his reputation. About what people would think. About how this would look to clients and investors and everyone who'd respected him. About how this could ruin everything he'd built. "No," he said. "I don't think I do." His assistant shook her head. "I don't know who you are right now. Neither do I, but I'm starting to figure it out." She left, closed the door behind her. Thomas sat in his office alone. The interview would air tomorrow. By tomorrow night everyone would know, everyone would see, everyone would judge. And somewhere deep in his chest, Thomas felt something like relief, because at least now it was out. At least now he didn't have to pretend anymore. At least now everyone would know what he'd been trying to hide for 3 days. That he didn't belong in this world anymore. That he'd outgrown it, or maybe he'd never fit in the first place. Maybe he'd just been good at pretending. Thomas tried to forget. He really did. He threw himself into work, took more meetings, started planning the next deal, stayed late at the office, went to the gym, had drinks with colleagues, did all the things he was supposed to do, all the things that used to work. But at night, alone in his apartment, he'd sit by the window and think about a blue truck driving away, about dust rising behind it, about his own hand holding money that meant nothing. The interview aired. It was worse than he thought. They'd edited it to make him look unstable, desperate, lost. The headline read, "Tech CEO's on-air breakdown raises questions about mental health and business." His phone exploded. His business partner, his lawyer, his board members. Everyone wanting to know if he was okay. Everyone wanting to manage the situation, control the narrative, fix the damage. Thomas didn't call any of them back. He tried calling his ex-wife, hung up before she answered. What would he say? That a stranger on a back road had made him question everything. That he felt like his whole life was built on sand. He tried going out, went to a bar with his business partner, sat there drinking expensive whiskey, listening to people talk about the interview, about how he must be having a breakdown, about how success sometimes breaks people, about how they hoped he'd get help. He left early, drove home. Sat in his car in the parking garage for 20 minutes, unable to make himself go inside. A week passed. Then 2. The feeling didn't go away. It got worse. It grew. It filled up all the empty spaces inside him, until he couldn't breathe right, couldn't think right, couldn't pretend everything was fine. His assistant noticed. "You sure you're okay?" she asked one morning. "I'm fine. You don't seem fine. Maybe you should talk to someone. A therapist or..." I said I'm fine. She left, closed the door quietly, like she was afraid he might break. That afternoon, Thomas stood at his office window looking out at the city, 42 floors up, buildings stacked against the horizon. All that progress, all that success, all those people working so hard to get somewhere, to be someone, to matter. And Thomas thought, what if none of it matters? What if the only thing that really mattered was what happened on that back road? What if everything else was just noise? He left the office, didn't tell anyone, didn't schedule it, just walked out, got in his car and drove. 3 hours later, he was on the back road again. The same empty road, the same flat landscape, the same heat rising off the blacktop. He found the spot where his car had died, pulled over, stood there, trying to feel what he'd felt, trying to understand why this place had changed everything. But standing there in the heat, with no dead car and no panic and no stranger appearing to save him, it just felt like any other road, hot, empty, ordinary. He got back in the car, started to drive away, then stopped, turned around, drove south instead, slow, looking for something, a sign, a turnoff, anything. 20 miles down he saw it, a break in the trees, a gravel road, easy to miss. He almost kept driving, almost convinced himself this was stupid, that he should go back to the city, back to his life, back to pretending. But he didn't. He turned. The gravel crunched under his tires. The road wound through trees, narrow and rough. He drove slow, feeling like he was trespassing, like he was going somewhere he wasn't supposed to go. Then the trees opened up, and there it was. A community, houses, old ones, wood siding, chain link fences, yards with gardens and broken down cars, a church with peeling paint, a community center, a basketball court with weeds growing through the cracks. Thomas drove slow. His Tesla looked wrong here. Too new, too expensive. People looked at him, not hostile, just curious. And something else, suspicious. He pulled into the parking lot of the community center, sat there, engine running, AC on, looking out at this place he'd never seen before but somehow felt like he'd been looking for. A woman came out. She was maybe 60. She walked over to his car, bent down to look at him through the window. He rolled it down. "Can I help you?" she asked. The question wasn't friendly. "I'm looking for someone," Thomas said. "A woman. Drives a blue truck. She helped me a few days ago." She studied him, taking in the car, the clothes, the watch. "Helped you how?" "My car broke down. On the main road." She got it running again. She nodded slowly. "That sounds like Naomi." Naomi Webb. She didn't point, didn't offer directions, just looked at him. "Why you looking for her?" "I wanted to thank her." "You already did that, I'm sure." "I tried to pay her." She refused. Something changed in her expression. "Of course she did. I just want to talk to her." "Why?" "Because." Thomas didn't know how to explain it. "Because I need to understand." "Understand what?" "Why she said no." She studied him for a long moment. "She's at the school. Volunteers there on Wednesdays. Red brick building about a mile up the road." She started to walk away. Stopped. Turned back. "But if you're here to cause trouble, or if you're some reporter looking for a story, you should leave now." "I'm not here to cause trouble. We've had people like you come through before. Rich folks who want to help, or say they want to help. They stick around a week, take some pictures, make themselves feel good, then disappear. We don't need more of that." "I'm not." "Sure you're not." She walked away. Thomas sat there, feeling the weight of her suspicion, feeling like he'd already failed some test he didn't know he was taking. He found the school, small, single story, red brick that had faded to orange, a playground that had seen better days. Kids were playing, laughing, living. Thomas parked across the street, turned off the car, sat there, watched. Through the window he could see classrooms, and in one room, near the back he saw her, Naomi, sitting next to a kid, pointing at something in a book. Patient, focused. Thomas watched for a long time. Then the bell rang. Kids poured out. Teachers followed. Naomi came out too. She was talking to another teacher, laughing about something. Then she looked across the street, saw the Tesla, saw Thomas sitting inside. She said something to the teacher. The teacher nodded, and walked away. Naomi crossed the street, slow, not surprised, not happy or unhappy, just steady. Thomas rolled down the window. "Mr. Pearson," Naomi said, "you remember me. Hard to forget a man trying to pay me $500 for a jumpstart." She leaned against the car. "How'd your meeting go?" "Good. I closed the deal." "Good." They stood there in silence, kids running past, teachers heading to their cars. "Why'd you come back?" Naomi asked. Thomas opened his mouth, closed it, didn't know what to say. "I wanted to understand," Thomas said finally. "Understand what?" "Why you said no." Naomi looked at him for a long time. "You want to take a walk?" They started walking, but they didn't get far. A woman was coming toward them, older, carrying groceries. She stopped when she saw Thomas, looked him up and down, then looked at Naomi. "This the one been asking about you?" She said. "Yeah." Naomi said. "He a reporter?" "No." "Then what's he want?" "Says he wants to understand." She looked at Thomas. "Understand what?" Thomas felt suddenly exposed, like he was on trial. "Why Naomi refused payment when she helped me?" "That's easy," she said. "Because we don't work that way here." "I know. You don't know. You think you know, but you don't." She shifted the grocery bags. "How long you planning on staying?" "I don't know. That's what they all say. I don't know. Then it turns into a day, then a week, then they take some pictures." put them on the internet, talk about how they help the poor people, make themselves feel good, then they leave, and we're right back where we started, except now we're also a story, a charity case, something for rich people to feel good about. I'm not here to take pictures. You say that now. I mean it. She looked at Naomi. You believe him? Naomi shrugged. Don't know yet. Well, I don't. She looked back at Thomas. I've seen too many people like you. People who think they can buy their way into being good. People who think showing up for a week makes them a saint. People who want credit for doing the bare minimum. She adjusted her bags again. We don't need saving. We need respect. And respect takes time. Takes showing up. Takes not leaving when things get hard. You ready for that? I think so. Thinking isn't doing. She started to walk away. Stopped. Naomi, you vouch for him. That's on you. But if he hurts these people, if he breaks their trust, don't expect anyone to be understanding. She left. Thomas stood there feeling like he'd been slapped. That's Mrs. Johnson, Naomi said. She runs the community center. She's protective. I wasn't trying to. I know, but she's right. We've had people come through before. People with good intentions. People who wanted to help. They never stay, and every time someone leaves, it gets a little harder to trust the next person. I'm not going to leave. You say that now, but you don't know what you're saying. You don't know what staying means. What it costs. Naomi started walking again. Come on. Let me show you something. They walked through the neighborhood. Past houses with peeling paint. Past yards where people were working. Past a corner store. Past kids playing. An old man was sitting on his porch. He watched them walk by. Watched Thomas especially. When they got close he called out, "Who's your friend, Naomi?" "This is Thomas. He's from the city." The old man nodded slowly. "What brings you out here, Thomas, from the city?" "Just visiting." "Visiting." The old man smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. "We don't get many visitors, especially not in cars like that." He gestured at the Tesla parked back at the community center. "That yours?" "Yes." "Must be nice, having that kind of money, that kind of freedom. Go anywhere, do anything, I suppose. So why you here? This doesn't seem like the kind of place people with money visit, unless they want something." "I don't want anything. Everyone wants something." The old man leaned forward. "You want to feel good about yourself. Want to tell your friends you help the poor people. Want to put it on your resume. What's your angle?" "I don't have an angle." "Sure you don't." He leaned back. "Well, enjoy your visit, Thomas from the city. Hope you find whatever you're looking for. Hope it makes you feel good. But do me a favor, when you leave, and you will leave, don't make any promises you can't keep. These people have had enough broken promises." They walked away. Thomas felt the weight of everyone's suspicion. Every person they passed looked at him the same way. Curious, suspicious, guarded. They reached a small park. Benches, a playground, kids playing. Naomi sat on a bench. Thomas sat next to her. "They don't trust me," Thomas said. "No. Why?" "Because trust is earned, and you haven't earned it yet." Naomi looked at him. "You want to understand why I said no to your money. This is part of it. Because money creates a transaction, and transactions end. But trust is built over time. By showing up, by being consistent, by proving you're not going to disappear. How long does that take? Depends. Could be weeks, could be months, could be years." Naomi stood up. "Or could be never. If you're not willing to do the work, if you're not willing to be patient, if you're not willing to let go of needing everyone to like you and trust you right away, I can do that." "Can you?" "Because right now you're already frustrated. I can see it. You came here expecting, what? A warm welcome, gratitude, open arms?" Thomas didn't answer. Because Naomi was right. That's exactly what he'd expected. "This isn't about you," Naomi said. "That's the first thing you need to understand. Your feelings, your need to be accepted, your need to help, none of that matters. What matters is what these people need, and what they need is consistency, reliability, someone who shows up and keeps showing up, not because it feels good, but because it needs doing. I want to be that." Wanting isn't being. Naomi started walking away. Come back tomorrow. If you're serious, come back and help Mrs. Johnson at the community center. She needs someone to move some boxes, paint some walls, do grunt work. Nothing special, nothing heroic, just work that needs doing. Okay. And Thomas, Naomi turned around. Don't expect anyone to thank you. Don't expect anyone to be impressed. Don't expect anything except hard work and suspicion. Can you handle that? Thomas thought about it, really thought about it, about showing up day after day to a place where no one trusted him, where no one wanted him, where every person looked at him like he was going to disappoint them, about doing it, without recognition, without gratitude, without any of the things that usually motivated him. I think so, he said. Then I'll see you tomorrow. Naomi walked away. Thomas stood there in the park, alone, feeling more isolated than he'd felt in his entire life, but also feeling something else, something that felt like purpose starting to take shape, starting to become real. They walked through the neighborhood, past houses with peeling paint and chain-link fences, past yards where people were working, past a corner store with bars on the windows, past kids playing in the street, past old people sitting on porches, nodding at Naomi as she passed. Naomi didn't say anything for a while, just walked, and Thomas walked with her, trying not to look like what he was, a man from somewhere else. You want to know why I said no? Naomi said. It wasn't a question. Yeah. Naomi stopped walking. They were in front of a house, small, tidy, white siding that needed painting, American flag on the porch, faded from sun. Man named Samuel used to live there, Naomi said. Died 3 years ago. Heart attack. Thomas waited. Samuel ran a garage. Naomi continued. When I was 19 I got in trouble. Wrong place, wrong time. Spent a year in county. When I got out, couldn't find work anywhere. Nobody wants to hire someone with a record. Naomi started walking again. Thomas followed. I slept in my car for 3 weeks. Ate at soup kitchens. Tried to keep myself together, but I was scared. Scared I'd never get back up. What happened? Samuel happened. He saw me sleeping in my car outside his garage. Could have called the cops. Instead he knocked on my window at 6 in the morning. Asked if I knew anything about cars. I said no. He said, you want to learn? They turned a corner. More houses, more lives. He let me sleep in the office. Naomi said. Taught me everything. How to fix engines. How to do body work. How to talk to customers. How to show up every day even when you don't want to. And he never asked for anything, not money, no. Naomi was quiet for a moment. I tried to pay Samuel back, after I got steady, after I got my own place, went to him with money. You know what he did? Said no, laughed, right in my face, not mean, but really laughed. Naomi smiled at the memory. Then he said the same thing I said to you. They reached a small park, benches, a playground, a basketball court with lines so faded you could barely see them. Naomi sat on a bench. Thomas sat next to her. Samuel had this saying. Naomi said, if you help someone to get paid, that's a job. If you help someone because they're a person, that's being human. She looked at Thomas. That's why I said no. The second I take your money, it becomes a job. But I didn't help you for pay. I helped you because you needed help. Thomas stared at the playground, at the kids, at the simple joy of swinging and laughing. But you need money, Thomas said. Everyone needs money. I didn't say I don't need money. I said that's not why I help people. Naomi leaned back. There's a difference. Money's important. It pays rent, buys food, but it's not what makes us human. Helping each other is what makes us human. Naomi stood up. You know what your problem is. You think money's the answer, but money's just a tool, like a hammer. You can build something with it, or you can just hit things. What if I want to help? Thomas asked. Not pay you, but help. This place, these people. Naomi studied him. Why would you do that? Because I don't know what else to do. The honesty surprised Thomas. I closed the deal, made millions, and I feel emptier now than when I was stuck on that road. Naomi was quiet for a long time. Then she said, if you're serious about helping, don't do it for me. Don't do it to feel better about yourself. Do it because it needs doing. And if you can't tell the difference yet, then you're not ready. She started walking away. How do I know when I'm ready? Thomas called after her. Naomi turned around. When you stop asking that question. Over the next weeks, Thomas learned what it meant to be tested. Every day brought new challenges, not the kind he was used to in business, the kind that came from people who had every reason not to trust him. He showed up at the community center the next morning. Mrs. Johnson barely acknowledged him, just pointed at a pile of boxes. Storage room needs clearing, she said. Put the good stuff on the left, trash on the right. Thomas spent 4 hours moving boxes in a room with no air conditioning. The work was hot, dirty, tedious. No one checked on him. No one thanked him. When he finished, Mrs. Johnson looked at the work, nodded once, and walked away. He came back the next day, and the next. Each day brought grunt work, painting walls, moving furniture, cleaning bathrooms, work that no one noticed unless it wasn't done. On the 5th day, Patricia approached him. She ran the community center. She'd been watching him all week. You're still here, she said. Yeah, why? Because I said I would be. She studied him. We got a board meeting tonight. Community members, we discuss what the center needs, what the neighborhood needs. You can sit in, but you don't talk. You just listen. Okay. That night, Thomas sat in the back of a room with 30 other people. They talked about problems, real problems. The roof leaking, the heating system failing, kids needing after-school programs, parents needing job training, elderly residents needing help with home repairs. The list went on and on. Thomas took notes on his phone. Every problem, every need, but he didn't speak, didn't offer solutions, just listened like he'd been told. At the end, someone noticed him. The same old man from the porch. You still here? He said. Yes, sir. You going to tell us what we need? How to fix our problems? No, sir. I'm just here to listen. The man studied him. We'll see. The next day Thomas was back at the community center. Mrs. Johnson had more work. This time he was helping set up for a food distribution, carrying boxes, setting up tables, organizing food. A woman came up to him while he was working, young, maybe 30. She looked familiar. After a moment, Thomas realized she was the woman whose groceries he'd carried that first day. You're still here, she said. Yeah. I didn't think you would be. Why not? Because people like you never stay. She picked up a box, started helping him. They worked in silence for a while. Then she said, I'm sorry I didn't thank you that day with the groceries. You don't need to apologize. I do though. It wasn't personal. I've had people help before. People who made a big deal about it, who wanted credit, who wanted me to be grateful. So now when someone helps she trailed off. You protect yourself. Yeah. They kept working. After a while, she said, my name's Alicia. Thomas. I know. Everyone knows. You're the rich guy who's having some kind of crisis. Thomas almost laughed. Is that what people think? That's what some people think. Others think you're here to buy property. Others think you're writing a book. Everyone's got a theory. What do you think? She looked at him. I think you're trying to figure something out, and I think maybe you're starting to realize it's harder than you thought. You're right about that. She smiled. Actually smiled. Keep showing up. That's the only thing that matters. Keep showing up and eventually people will stop wondering why you're here. But showing up got harder, because Thomas's old life started to push back. His business partner called, then called again, then showed up at Thomas's apartment. We need to talk, he said. About what? About the fact that you've been MIA for 3 weeks, about the fact that you're not returning calls, about the fact that the board is concerned. Let them be concerned. Thomas, what the hell is going on with you? I'm figuring some things out. By disappearing, by abandoning the company you built. I'm not abandoning anything. That's exactly what you're doing. His partner came in, paced around the apartment. Do you know what people are saying? That you had a breakdown, that you're unstable, that you can't be trusted. The interview didn't help, and now you're just gone. I'm dealing with some things. Deal with them while running your company. Deal with them while honoring your commitments. Deal with them like an adult instead of running away. I'm not running away. Then what do you call this? Thomas didn't answer, because he didn't know what to call it. Awakening, breakdown, both. The board wants you out, his partner said. They're talking about a vote, about replacing you as CEO, about moving forward without you. Let them. Let them. Thomas, This is your company. You built this, you can't just walk away. Why not? Because you owe it to the people who believed in you, who invested in you, who worked for you. You can't just abandon them because you're having some existential crisis. What if it's more than that? Then figure it out. But figure it out while still being a professional, while still honoring your commitments. His partner stopped pacing, looked at him. They're giving you 2 weeks. 2 weeks to come back, to show you're still committed, to prove you're still capable. If you don't, they vote, and you're out. Okay, that's all you have to say. What do you want me to say? I want you to say you'll come back. I want you to say this was just a blip, that you're okay, that we can go back to normal. Thomas looked at him, at this man who'd been his partner for 8 years, who'd built this business with him, who knew everything about him except the parts that mattered. I can't go back to normal, Thomas said, because normal was wrong. Normal was empty. Normal was building something that didn't matter. Of course it matters. We employ 300 people. We provide value. We create wealth for who? For people who already have wealth. For shareholders who just want more. For everyone. For the economy. For society. Do you really believe that? His partner stared at him. I used to think I knew you. Now I don't know who you are. I'm starting to figure that out. His partner left, angry, disappointed, worried. Thomas watched him go and felt something break. Another tie to his old life. Another bridge burning. The next day his lawyer called. Thomas, we need to discuss your position. What about it? The board is moving forward with action. They're claiming abandonment, breach of fiduciary duty. They're building a case to remove you. Let them. You don't understand. If they remove you, you lose everything. Your shares, your position, your reputation, everything you built. I understand. Then fight. File a counterclaim. Protect your interests. No, I'm not fighting. There was a long silence. Then his lawyer said, I can't represent someone who won't fight for themselves. I understand. Do you? Because you're about to lose everything. Your company, your money, your legacy, everything. Maybe I need to lose it. That's insane. Maybe. But it's my decision. She hung up. Another bridge burned. That afternoon Thomas's phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer. Then did. Mr. Pearson. A woman's voice. Professional. This is Rachel Chen from Business Insider. I'm doing a follow-up story on your interview, on what's happened since. I was hoping we could talk. No, it would just be a few questions, about where you've been, what you've been doing. There are rumors you're having some kind of breakdown. I'm not talking to the press. People are concerned about you, your investors, your employees. They deserve to know. They don't deserve anything from me. Thomas hung up. The calls kept coming. Other reporters, other outlets. Everyone wanted the story. Everyone wanted to know what happened to Thomas Pearson. Successful CEO turned. What? Burnout? Breakdown? Cautionary tale. Thomas turned off his phone, went back to the community, to the work, to the place where no one cared about his success or his failure, where he was just a guy moving boxes and painting walls and trying to figure out how to be useful. But even there the pressure followed him, because Mrs. Johnson called a meeting. The community members, the board, and Thomas. They sat in a circle in the community center. 30 people, all looking at Thomas. Mrs. Johnson spoke first. Thomas has been here 3 weeks now, showing up every day, doing work, and I think it's time we addressed this directly. What do you want? Thomas looked around the circle, at all these faces. Some are familiar now, some are still suspicious. I want to help, he said. Help how? However you need. That's not an answer, the old man from the porch said. Help means different things. Some people help by writing a check and leaving. Some people help by taking pictures and posting them online. Some people help by making themselves feel good. What kind of help are you offering? Thomas thought about it. The kind where I show up, where I do the work, where I'm here, even when it's hard. For how long? I don't know. There it is, someone said. He doesn't know. He's going to stick around until he gets bored or until his real life calls him back. Then he'll leave, like they all do. I'm not leaving, Thomas said. You say that now, but what happens when the board wants you back? When your company needs you? When your old life comes calling? You going to choose us over that? Thomas opened his mouth to say yes, but then he stopped. because the truth was his old life was calling. The board, the lawyer, the reporters, all of them pulling him back, and he didn't know if he was strong enough to resist. "I don't know," he said honestly. "My old life is falling apart. My company is trying to push me out. I'm losing everything I built, and I don't know what happens next. I don't know if I can resist going back. I don't know if I'm strong enough to choose this over that." The room was silent. Then Mrs. Johnson spoke. "At least you're honest." She looked around the room. "He's right. His old life is calling him back, and we don't know if he'll stay. We don't know if we can trust him. But he's been here 3 weeks. He's done the work. He's showed up. And I think we owe it to him and to ourselves to see if he's serious. And if he's not," someone asked, "then we'll know, and we'll move on, like we always do." She looked at Thomas. "But I think he might be serious. I think he might be one of the ones who stays. And if he is, we could use the help." A woman spoke up. "Alicia, I vote we give him a chance." "Me too," someone else said. One by one, people voted. Not everyone. Some stayed silent. Some voted no. But enough voted yes. "Okay," Mrs. Johnson said. "You get a chance. But if you leave, if you break trust, if you disappoint these people, you don't get another one." "Understood. Understood," Thomas said. That night, Thomas sat in his apartment, looking at his phone, at all the missed calls, all the messages, all his old life demanding attention. He thought about going back, about salvaging his company, about fighting the board, about returning to normal. But then he thought about the community center, about Alicia's smile, about Mrs. Johnson's trust, about the work that needed doing, about the people who'd given him a chance even when they had every reason not to, and he made a choice. He called his lawyer. "Don't fight the board, let them have it. Let them vote me out. Thomas, I'm done. I'm walking away. Send me the papers. I'll sign whatever they need. You're making a mistake, maybe, but it's my mistake to make." He hung up, turned off his phone, and felt something he hadn't felt in years: freedom. 3 months later, Thomas stood in front of the school again. Same fence, same building. But now he saw it different. His lawyer was there. She tracked him down. She stood by her car, holding the folder. "They withdrew the offer," she said. "You didn't call back. They moved on." "Good. $270 million, Thomas." "I know." She looked at the school, at Naomi by the fence, at the workers replacing windows, at Thomas in jeans and a t-shirt. "What are you doing?" "Something different." She stood there for a moment, then closed the folder, walked to the car, stopped. "For what it's worth, I hope you find what you're looking for." "Me too." She left. Thomas stayed. Naomi walked over. "You really turned it down?" Naomi said. "Yeah. Why?" Thomas looked at the school, at the kids coming out for recess. "Because this matters more." Naomi nodded. "Patricia wants to see you." 6 o'clock. 6 months later, Thomas sat in his office in the community center. Small room. Desk from a yard sale. Chair that squeaked. Window looking out at the neighborhood. The school across the street had new windows, a new roof, new computers, books in the library, a playground where kids could play safe. The changes had come slow. He'd learned that you can't rush trust, you earn it, day by day, by showing up. He'd given up the company, sold his shares, walked away. His business partner thought he was crazy. His ex-wife thought he was having a breakdown. His friends stopped calling. He didn't try to explain. You can't explain finding something that matters more than money. You just live it. Someone knocked. Patricia. She ran the community center. She'd been the hardest to convince. Now she was the one who trusted him most. "Got a minute?" she asked. "Always." Woman came by. "Her son needs glasses. Can't see the board. Insurance won't cover it." Thomas pulled out his notebook. "What's his prescription?" They talked. He made calls, found an optometrist who could help. The woman came by later, tried to give him $50, all she had. "Keep it," he said. "Use it for something else." She looked at him, really looked at him. "Thank you," she said. After she left, Thomas sat at his desk, looked out the window, thought about the journey from that road to this room. That evening, he walked through the neighborhood. Same walk he took every evening. Waved at people, stopped to talk about the weather, their kids, life. Mrs. Henderson asked him to look at her sink. It was leaking. He didn't know how to fix sinks, but Jerome did. So Thomas called Jerome. They fixed it together. Thomas holding the flashlight, handing tools, learning. Naomi found him at the park. Same bench where they'd sat 6 months ago. "You've been here 6 months, Naomi said. "Yeah. How does it feel?" "Different. Better. Harder than I thought." "That's because it's real." They sat in silence, kids playing, sun setting. "People trust you now," Naomi said. "You know why?" "Why?" "Because you stayed. Because you showed up when it was hard. Because you learned this isn't about you." Thomas felt something in his chest, not the emptiness that had been there for so long, something else. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For not giving up on me, for teaching me." Naomi smiled. "I didn't teach you anything. You learned it yourself. I just pointed the way." "You coming to the fish fry Friday?" Naomi asked. "Yeah. Bring coleslaw. I made some yesterday. Patricia taught me." Naomi laughed. "Look at you, learning to cook." Thomas stood up. "I should get home. Contractors coming early to look at the church heating." "You're really doing this, making this your life." "This is my life." Finally, Naomi nodded. "Good." Thomas walked home, to the small house on Naomi's street, 2 bedrooms, front porch with a swing. Nothing fancy, but it was home. Inside he made dinner, spaghetti, garlic bread, things he'd learned to cook from women who'd taken pity on him. After dinner he sat on the porch, watched the sun set, watched the streetlights come on, watched people coming home from work, living their lives. He thought about the man he used to be, the man who would have driven past, the man who thought money could buy anything, the man who measured worth in dollars. That man was gone. In his place was someone still learning, still getting it wrong sometimes, still not sure what he was doing, but showing up anyway. Some people are poor in money, but rich in dignity, rich in community, rich in purpose, and some people are rich in money until they learn how to be human. Thomas was learning, slowly, one day at a time. The stars came out. Thomas sat on his porch and watched them, thought about where he'd been, and where he was now. He'd lost money, lost success, lost the life he'd built, but he'd gained something more valuable: purpose, community, connection. A kid rode by on a bike, waved at Thomas. Thomas waved back. The porch swing creaked. The night settled in, and Thomas sat there not thinking about what he'd lost or what he'd gained, just sitting, being present, being here. That was enough.
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.